Welcome everyone, this is Matthew Tate from Fork in the Road YouTube channel, your channel for transformation. And today we are continuing on with the Growth Gurus series, where I introduce you to local people who are gurus that are going to help you grow. So if you're stuck, if you're dealing with things like anxieties or depressions, or all the way through to, trying to move yourself forward, these are the people who will help you move forward. My name's Matthew Tate, and I also have a coaching business, and I love to connect with other practitioners out there. And today I have the wonderful Sonia Charkisky, who runs a business called A Perfect Balance. And she is an amazing practitioner who we are going to interview today. Welcome, Sonia.
Thank you very much, Matthew. It's a pleasure to be here. Can't wait to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll be talking to Sonia today about her fork in the road later on, as to how she ended up helping other people, where she made that decision to either go down the old path or lift herself to a better place, which is what this channel is all about. And so without further ado, let's jump in and we'll have a chat with Sonia.
So often we find, a lot of the people that do come to me are those that are very, very capable, that have got, everything lined up. They know what to do. They know how to do it. They've been doing it for a long time. They've got their goals in place. They've got their vision in place. But again, there's so many different elements of their life that creeps in that pulls them in different directions. I often sort of akin it to sort of a Jenga game. We're all born with this amazing block of tools and these amazing sort of, this strong foundation. But the way in which we tend to operate is we kind of take from one resource that's doing really well and we place it somewhere else that isn't doing so well. And when you do that for long enough, all these little holes and gaps emerge. And then you end up having all these little mini tower moments throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout life, until finally sort of our resources are so depleted that we end up having those really big tower moments where we can't feel ourselves being able to resource or build ourselves back up again.
And God forbid the tower falls over.
Exactly. Exactly. And often it does, if we're not sort of careful and we're not replenishing and we're not feeding back into ourselves and finding the supports and resources, we do find ourselves having those really big tower moments.
And it brings forward a concept I've been made aware of a little while ago, of how people need that support system, but you need a team. Who is the team around you? Who is who's on your, and there's this great this guy named Tommy Bellman, and he's got this system where he talks about having, you got your CEO in your mind, you got your CFO, you got your COO, you got all these sort of members, and then there's HR, which is the who's on your team, and you have to go and look at and assess who's on your team and who's helping you, who's supporting you, who's taking away from you. And it's a really interesting concept, and
also as a leader, part of that is knowing which member of your team is a natural leader and can actually take that role on, or you can get sort of the background stuff happening for you. So yeah.
And they've got the vision, they're on board, they know where you're going, and they've got the ability to lead.
Exactly.
That's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go on. Yeah.
So, and that's what I was talking about with the Jenga game, is the resources, is again knowing where the balance is. Hence, the perfect balance is finding where your resources are, where your greatest niche is, or where your greatest skills are, and we tend to take from that, but also knowing where not to put it and where to find that balance between when's enough, when have you over depleted that, and giving back.
So it's about awareness, like what is the gap in the Jenga in the Jenga castle?
In the Jenga
where are the
castle.
holes? And then knowing how to put it back in and at the appropriate time, and
using your resources wisely.
Wow. And so do you have any stories that you can share, without giving up names, but any kind of stories of people who you've seen go through that process?
Gee, now you've caught me. Let's see. Well, I suppose sort of trying to sort of understand kinesiology is something that so many people don't really get. And the best way I can sort of describe, and it really is a difficult one to describe, even having done kinesiology now for 15 years, it's still one that I find tricky to explain. And the best way I can explain it is, I'm a glorified interpreter. We use muscles as a way, like almost Morse code. So if you imagine sort of Morse code where you've got your dots and your little lines going through, and we use that to communicate directly to the body.
Right.
So it's a communication tool, and communication is one of my greatest values. It's one of the things that I find highly important to eliminate misunderstandings, to actually be able to express exactly what it is that needs, that is needed at the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's to find what's going wrong as well as what's going right. It's about finding where the glitches are happening in your body versus how to find a solution for it. And it's not always what we think and feel. It's not always what's consciously available. I mean, you talk about your little triangle and the identification and how it all kind of comes down.
Yeah.
And if again we look at the Jenga game, when we're taking a resource from one place and putting it somewhere else, sometimes things get linked that you wouldn't even consider being an issue, or that they've actually cross-referenced. And I suppose the best example that I've got is when I had a gentleman come in, and he was beside himself because they couldn't actually find what was wrong with his knee. For as long as he could remember, he had this incredible knee issue and problem, and it ached, and they couldn't find it. There was nothing medically wrong with the knee. So he was about to go into exploratory surgery, which is sort of to the other extreme, to see if there was anything they could find.
Yeah.
He ended up coming in, and of course the first port of call is, well, let's reduce the pain. Let's have a look at what's going on the surface and deal with that. As we started doing some exploration of our own, which is what kinesiology is, we're just trying to find as much information as we can. An age came up, which was when he was 6. So we had a look and explored 6, and it made absolutely no sense to me, absolutely none whatsoever. And the emotion that came up was joy and elation. So again, when we think about problems, exactly that look on your face was exactly what was like, joy and elation. How would this be relevant to a knee problem? So when we actually looked at it, what had happened was that he was quite a shy kid who didn't like to go out into the world too much. And he'd been playing football for the whole season and holding himself back from fear, anxiety, and all these other things. And it was the last game. And all the other kids were sort of playing, and he saw the ball and he saw an opportunity to kick a goal. So he went for it. First time ever that he went for it. And what he ended up doing was he ended up kicking that winning goal. Wow. And so that feeling of elation, that feeling of joy, and everybody's come in and they've lifted him up and he's felt amazing. But what ended up happening was, as he kicked the goal, this other kid came in, bowled him over. He's fallen on his knee and hurt his knee quite badly.
It's a connection, right.
So there's the connection there. But it went further as he was then asked to speak in front of everyone and say, you know, how he felt and thank everyone for the end of the season sort of hurrah. And it was the first time he actually felt like he could do that. And again, there was this feeling of joy and elation that he connected to it. Now, he's gone on to be in the debating team every opportunity he could. He's kicking goals in life. He's ended up feeling like that sense and that emotion was amazing. But the way his body translated it was, the way I survived it, the way I got there, was that my knee got sore. Wow. It got hurt. So what it did was it connected those two, and every time he went up to do a speech, or every time he went to kick the goals in life,
you get a sore knee?
His knee would start to ache.
Oh, jeez.
Nothing medically wrong, but that's where the stress for him was being held. That's where the stress for him was being transferred. And he could feel the elation, feel the joy, feel all these things, go on to do amazing things in life. But the way his body, it just, and you wouldn't make these connections.
I mean,
So
I've made all those sorts of connections with clients in painful situations, not happy about something when you're 6 and then that showing up when you're an adult. But I've never heard of that connection of a happy emotion connecting then to
a pain.
And somehow the mind said, oh, then I've got to have a sore knee because that's what got me through.
Exactly.
Wow.
And this is what the body does. There's so much innate wisdom. Now, from an adult's perspective, we can sort of shift and change the way we translate that. But for a 6-year-old, it then compounds one on top of the other. And this is what he's carried throughout his life. And this is why when we talk about childhood traumas or childhood, the inner child, this is where our storytelling starts and where it sort of goes from there.
Wow.
And we can't intellectualize it because it's just the way, it's that genetic.
Well, it makes no sense if you haven't, not aware of how it's been constructed. It makes no sense. But once you're aware of how it's been constructed, it makes sense.
Exactly.
But if you don't get that Morse code, that redefining, the translation, if you don't get that.
Yeah. And it's all in our cells. It's all connected.
Yeah.
And our bodies have a little filing system that whenever we go under stress, it goes, well, what was the last stressful situation that comes close to this?
Mm-hmm.
And what happened in and around that time? And because our system is so, it's just such an incredible source of information, and it's doing everything it can for us to survive, it will put that in place again, whether it makes sense or not, because you're here, you're alive, therefore it worked.
Wow. That's great.
And that's what I love about kinesiology, is that when we go in there and you have those, and people go, oh my God, I've never thought of that. That's amazing. That's fantastic. Well, this is the reason why. And this is what I love about it so much.
You were saying it's hard to explain, but I think you've just explained it.
Oh, there we go.
It's not that hard to explain it. I mean, the how part is probably the part, because I had one session once before I started on my journey into coaching and NLP and EFT and SDH and all these other things I've researched. Before I got into that, I went to a guy who was a kinesiologist, and it was an interesting experience. And he was like trying to read what was going on inside by, lifting my arm and pressing down and asking questions. And it was a very interesting experience. And knowing what I know now about in the coaching mindset, unconscious mind area, I've got a better appreciation for it, but I still am very much a novice. So this is really interesting talking to you. So when people are coming to your business, perfectbalance.com.au, but for those who want to go and check it out, for when people are coming to you, what's the problems that are, sore knee, we've got a sore knee as one example, but what are the problems that they come to you for?
Look, for most people, I think stress is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And it's in everything. We're seeing it unfolding in our community at the moment in really fast and incredible ways. And it's knowing how to juggle, knowing where their resources coming from, feeling depleted, feeling exhausted, not knowing why. Trying to do the best that they can with everything they've got, and not knowing why they're still feeling under par. Sorry.
Yeah.
So for most part, it is dealing with those underlying issues and the undercurrents. And I think sort of the best way I can describe it is, for me, I kind of like to ask the question, well, what exactly is stress? And often when I ask the question, people talk about the symptomatics of it. Is, it's all the surface stuff. It's what they're feeling as far as, my heart rate, or, I feel sweaty. We talk about fight and flight. But I like to reverse engineer it and go, well, what exactly is stress talking to you about? Again, being a great communicator and talking about sort of communication and finding what that is. Yeah. It's different for every single person. It's not the same. But when we get right underneath it all, it's about safety, because stress is telling us that something is unsafe, whether it be that our body is stressed because it's being injured. Well, what does the body then do? It does everything it can to create a safe environment within the body so no more damage or no more injury can occur. And we do the same with our emotions, with our mentality, with all of it. It's let's create a safe space. And often when we're stressed, whether it be an argument with a loved one, what's happening? We're not feeling safe in that communication for whatever reason. Our triggers come up.
Absolutely.
Okay? So if we can create a safe space that we feel heard, seen, and understood, what then happens to the communication?
Opens up.
It opens up. When you have a child throwing a tanty, it can appear as though you're model coddling them, but if they're feeling safe, they're looking towards their adult to actually go, well, okay, something's going wrong. I'm not feeling safe. And maybe throwing a tanty, but why are they throwing a tanty?
Yeah.
Something's not right. Create a safe space where they're feeling heard and understood. They're more likely then to do whatever it is that you want to do. But if their adult is then stressing and yelling and screaming, all we're doing is confirming to them that their environment is not safe.
Yeah, it's interesting. They like I've heard some childhood experts talk about that inadvertently, talking about if you're not regulating as an adult your emotions quickly back to calm, and when something spikes, and if it stays up there, it's because you grew up as a kid that wasn't allowed to express their emotions in a safe way. And so, and you had to either shut them down or it explodes or whatever it is, it comes out as an adult. As an adult, your job's then to do the parenting your parent never did, because they didn't have the capacity. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. And this is the thing, is that we do the best that we can with what knowledge and resources we have. And once we can start to have those conversations and unpack that and what that means for the person, so when they come in and have a kinesiology session, there is no judgment on it. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
And of course, when there's stresses and when their triggers come up, and we can get underneath the why and what's trapped in that emotion or in that body system, then we've got a better way of navigating our way out of it. Yeah. And we all know, we often get people coming in with huge digestion issues, and when we think about how stress works in the body, well, it's no wonder that digestion is one of the first things to go. Fight and flight means the energy from our torso goes out to our limbs, because that's what needs, we're running or fighting. So where does the energy need to go? So our digestion, all our gut stuff tends to get turned down. Our reproduction gets turned down, cortisol goes out, and we often have people with those issues. One of the quickest ways to get that back in flow is to breathe. I've watched quite a few of the stuff that you do, and breath is one of the fastest ways to get back into calm. But if we think about the dynamics of it, if we go past our diaphragm and into our belly, what are we telling our system? Is that it's safe, that we don't have to go into fight and flight, because if we're putting focus into the areas that have been turned down, what's it going to do? It's going to go, oh, hold on. We're really not in that fight or flight. So what is going on? All of a sudden, we've created a sense of safety.
You turn your brain back on, and as opposed to shutting it down and going straight into emotional run.
Yeah, exactly. So, and by practicing those things, and I tell people often, practice it when you are calm.
Yes.
And practice it in environments where you're likely to feel triggered.
Right.
Because as you know, the way the brain works is through repetition, consistency. But if you're doing it in places that we're already going to predict that we're going to be triggered, when the trigger happens, you've already put that into place, so you're not overthinking it. It just comes naturally.
Yeah, because you condition yourself into the situation, so we can condition ourselves out of the situation.
Exactly.
you have to know that to start with. You're just reacting, thinking I'm screwed.
Yeah.
And this is the reason I do the Growth Gurus series, is because I want to give people hope that there are many ways back to calm, many ways out of the stressful situation, many ways into a better life, and that you're not broken. You're actually working really well. It's just you've got to tweak the program you've got in there.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it really does come to the stories that we tell ourselves. Like, I mean, everybody uses the terminology fight and flight. You know, we're always so, and again, it's that reverse engineering. And we talk about sort of the lion sort of chasing the deer. But we don't see, if you look at nature and you go out there, you're not seeing prey running around crazily, every sort of, you know, fearing a predator chasing them. They're actually pretty calm most of the time. And our bodies, as I said before, have got an innate wisdom. You can get a lion and a deer drinking from the water hole quite calmly without fear or stress. And the deer will innately know whether or not that lion changes its energy. Like, it senses the energy. It senses whether or not all of a sudden that lion's gone, oh, hold on, there's a deer in front of me. Food.
I'm out of here.
And they run in that moment. But they only run for a couple of minutes. They don't run for the rest of the day. They run until they sense the danger has stopped. They stop, they reevaluate, and then they keep going if need to. But what we as humans tend to do is we see the lion, which is our fear, which is our triggers, and automatically go into fight or flight before we've even realised if there's any stress or not. We haven't been taught, or we've lost the art of trusting our instincts. Going, hey, hold on, there's another side of fight or flight. There's another side of survival. And that's knowing when we're in harmony with the space around us.
Yeah, we're the only animal that's got that prefrontal cortex that allows us the front part thinking brain. That's what changes us relative to all other animals, but we don't realise we're part of biology.
Well, that's it. And and we have this sort of, I mean, if you talk, the frontal cortex is the perfect example, because we've got the amygdala, as you know, which is our sort of reptilian connecting to that emotional.
The emotional master of everything.
Of everything.
It hijacks the system.
It does. It hijacks it if we allow it, if we haven't sort of tapped into that innate part of our being. Then we've got the mammalian brain, which is all about our herd and our tribe. And then we've got our frontal cortex, which is all about our thinking, our creativity, all of that. So what we then do is we've gone into fight or flight. So, oh my God, there's a threat. There's a lion. There it is. We've run around like crazy. Then we've gone, oh, well, that's a little bit stupid because there was no threat there and I've just run for no reason. So then we go back to our tribe and we go, oh my God, you wouldn't believe it. There was this lion there and it was huge and it was big and he had these big massive teeth and oh my God, you wouldn't believe. And I ran and I survived it and I thought, great. Because we don't want to be seen as weak and we don't want to be seen as, and we end up feeding that story and go, well, hey, hold on, I've got to justify this, or I've got to find an answer for this. Whatever that trigger was or whatever that fear is, we just know that we reacted. And we want to then talk about it. We don't want to be seen as weak around our tribe. And we end up rehashing those stories over and over again. I mean, how many people do you know have a long list of woes that they keep talking about that happened 20, 30 years ago?
God, yes.
Okay, but if we can learn to let go of the list and go, well, hey, hold on, I've got this innate ability to stay in my calm and actually use the frontal cortex to tap into creativity, problem solving, understanding. That's the calm brain. We can tap ourselves into. And that's where learning happens. Learning doesn't happen in the amygdala or in the mammalian brain.
It gets put in there, but it doesn't start there.
It doesn't start there and it doesn't stay there.
So true. I mean, I had a client who I shared the work of Byron Katie, the work where she asks you to question the thoughts in your mind, because, you know, the certain thoughts would come up and say, well, let's start. Is it true? You know, and then the second question is it absolutely true? And the third question is, well, who are you being when that's true?
Yeah.
And then who would you be if that wasn't true?
True.
Right. And by the time, if you really cycle through those, and then there's that flip at the end, maybe you're being that thing that you're accusing the world of being. Oh, what? You know, it's a great.
That's the world reflecting us back, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's I like that. Let's test this out, because sometimes there are threats every now and then.
Oh, exactly. Definitely.
Maybe 5 or 10% of the time, maybe 1% of the time, you know, but most of the time it's a load of rubbish, or it's coming from something deep inside you. And that's what your kinesiology is testing, right?
Yep, exactly. It's like, what is that line? Is that line at the watering hole? And if I'm being triggered, what is it that I'm triggering here?
Yeah.
You know, what is it that is feeling unsafe?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And as soon as we can understand what that feeling is and where the safety issue is for us, then we can address it. Then we can look at it. We can unpack it.
And that comes back to your Jenga board and the gaps and knowing.
Definitely. And one of the quickest ways of actually, like, especially if you're on your own and you're finding yourself getting triggered, the breath work is incredible. So taking those deep belly breaths, do 3 to 5, in as long as you can, hold for as long as you can, and out for as long as you can, is really amazing. But one of the ways to actually tap into your frontal cortex is just put your hand on your forehead.
Yes, I've seen that. I've used that too myself, where you can put your hand here and your hand there, and then start saying the things that you're actually after, or working on it. And it starts to all sync up and connect, and you do get new thoughts. Oh, yeah, actually, that's a different way of thinking about it, which is really cool.
Yeah. And all that's doing is, if you think about sort of the warmth of your hands, is it actually gets a blood flow happening, and it actually engages the whole brain.
Yeah.
So you're actually engaging your left and right. You're actually bringing blood to the front, so it's not just the back. You're using your back wisdom, your past and your future, getting creative, getting, forward thinking. So how do we actually problem solve this?
That's great. I never actually articulated it like that before. So that's great. Just the left and right, front and back, blood flowing makes sense, and then energy as well, because there's energy in our hands, and
exactly
the brain's in a big electrical circuit. So it does change how it's operating, which is great.
Yeah. And we do it innately. Like, I mean, if you walk in and you've seen your kid, or you go to work and something's just gone left of field and you don't expect it, what's the first thing that people do? Oh my God, what's going on? We actually hold our heads, our bodies.
Let's stop everything from falling out. It's all going to fall.
It's like, oh my God, what are we doing? Yeah. So we, again, as I said, innately our bodies know instinctively what to do. And it's only when those glitches happen where it, again, like with what happened with this gentleman with the 6-year-old, is sometimes our wiring just goes a little bit left of field and doesn't quite know how to regulate itself or how to reset itself.
It's done a thing in NLP. It's called that complex equivalence, where this equals that. And in that story you told, this was, I've had this incredible elation, this incredible, fantastic feeling. And then that was, he's connected it with the pain of his knee. And somehow when he gets this, that comes up. And he's been a successful person with an achy knee. It's like, it's crazy, but it does work, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, what's fascinating about it is that he ended up coming back to me a few months later, and he was, again, quite ecstatic about the difference and the shifts that occurred with that one there, but he was still complaining about a knee ache. So again, we sort of further investigated, had a bit of a chat and had a bit of a talk about it. And as it turned out, it was when he was at home. So home life wasn't great. And there was all sorts of conflicts and all sorts of issues surrounding home life. Being a type A personality, always having to be on the go, always accomplishing, because that's where he felt his joy and his elation and his purpose. When he was at home, he also couldn't stop.
Right.
And what it ended up coming up was he wasn't able to relax. And the emotion that came up was accountability and humbleness. And it came back to the age of 6. And so we had another exploration around what had happened, and it was for the same day. And the way he was brought up was, you, regardless of wins, you still have to be humble and you still need to be accountable. So even though you won, you still have chores to do in the family. You're still part of the family team.
Right.
But he always felt as though he needed to do. So before he could have that ice cream, or before he can sit and have, you know, watch his favourite show or play his favourite game or go outside and have his friends, he still had certain chores to do.
Right.
So what
So
had happened
you have
was,
to pay a price before you can relax and have fun.
and have fun. Yeah, you were still part. So it was all well intentioned and it was all good. And as parents, we all understand we've got to sort of give, you know, those boundaries and give kids sort of an understanding. Just because you've done really well here doesn't mean that you get off the hook here.
Yeah, yeah.
And so for him, he again, they ended up going to the doctors, and the doctors turned around and goes, "That's actually quite a bad injury. He needs to have his feet up.
Right.
He needs to relax, and that swelling needs to come down." So all of a sudden he's gone home and his parents are like, "Oh yeah, you can sit on the couch. And while you're on the couch, you can watch your favourite show.
Right.
Oh, and while you're there, here you can have some ice cream. It was well deserved."
So he's connected the needs.
So at home, the only time he gave himself permission to relax
was when he had a
was
sore knee.
when there was something wrong, and his family were like, no, if you're unwell, that's fine. So he again linked that was when he could stop and relax.
So he's got to be somehow injured or in a bad
Somehow unwell, or
That's-
but what he was doing was he was also having those standards and expectations of his wife and of his kids.
Yes.
So there was conflict. So he wasn't allowing anybody else to relax either because they had these jobs to do.
Yeah, and they're
So
not.
once he
Yeah.
So once he was able to then have a look at that, he then turned around and went, "Well, hey, hold on, I'm not being fair on the rest of my family."
Doing the same.
Sorry?
I'm doing the same to them as to what happened to me. And that's a really massive one on intergenerational handing down of those emotions, you know, because the kids get brought up in that emotion. The parents driven by it, the kids brought up with it, and then they do the same thing to their kids unconsciously, not realizing it. And then they realize, hang on, it's not what I want. And that's just how we work. It's wow, that's a fascinating story.
Yeah. And I mean, you can just then see how the flow on effect happened, because he was still coming to me in regards to the knee.
Yeah.
But what then happened was he was able to then see how he was interacting with his wife and how he was becoming quite that brick wall for his family. He couldn't actually enjoy the time he was spending with his kids because there was conditions on that. And the moment he was able to do that, he just sort of said to his wife, "Okay, you can go off and at that weekend with the girls. You can now go and do, you know, have that massage. I can now do that as well." And the productivity, of course, then increased because everybody was connecting better.
Yeah.
And he was giving himself permission to actually relax.
Wow.
So it was giving
he's actually getting more of his A-type, you know, more things getting done because he got on board with his wife. And, you know, when you get a husband and wife together, geez, you make an amazing team.
Exactly. So and that realization that he wasn't giving himself permission to relax, that he had to be constantly doing, that he had to be always accountable, that he always had a job and there was a bigger team, sort of, that he was part of a bigger team. So it like I said, the kinesiology is just amazing. Like you get underneath so many sort of unforeseeable issues and get those massive aha moments.
That's brilliant. I have a couple of videos about this concept of the jockey and the horse, where the horse is your unconscious mind and the jockey is your conscious mind, the thoughts that you have. And if you're not in a good relationship with your horse, you're going to go for a ride. Your conscious mind,
exactly.
Your horse is going to bolt through the bush, and you're going to be crashing and bashing and fearing for life. And that's what happens. It's that's I love your stories, and I think that it's one of those real failings of the way we're brought up, is that we're not taught about how our mind works. I mean, if we knew it, now it seems obvious to me because I've been in this field for a while now.
Yeah.
But if I knew, imagine what we'd all be like. If I learned this stuff when in my 40s, right? Imagine if you knew this when you were 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or 15, you know, like how much more evolved as a human being we would be. We wouldn't be running these old programs.
Exactly. And this is part of our learning, isn't it? This is part of it. And this is, again, where I love serving people who are serving others, because they need that support and they're not aware of sort of some of their stories that that have been sort of concertinaed over many, many years as to what drives them and what creates their issues. And yeah, to be able to unpack that, and then they can then utilize it, like this gentleman being able to then go, oh, that's what's going on with the family. So it's not just a me problem.
Yeah.
This is now impacting.
Yeah.
It's a belief system that's kicked in. It's a thought process. It's a learning, and it has that amazing ripple effect.
And the person comes towards you, and I have this too with clients, they come towards you with a certain problem, but as a practitioner of whatever your method is, you know, there's something underneath. There's something under the surface that's driving this, but we'll address this initial thing. And then I love it when the client has their own aha moment where they, or you know, through our work, they go, oh my God, that's connected to that. Like your client with the knee, and he ended up back to 6 years old, and he's ended up back to, you know, I get ice cream, and so I can't relax without some sort of pain, you know. You know, I love those moments. It's like, just watching someone open up and realize and get empowerment. I think that's the word, is the empowerment of their life, where they're powerless, and that's why they're looking for help, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And again, I've learned over the years not to question what comes up, because it doesn't make sense. Like, I mean, if you think about that initial sort of when we started the story, like, who would have clicked elation and joy with a knee pain?
Yeah, because
it just didn't make sense at all. And like at the beginning when I was first doing it, I would actually withhold that information because I'm like, I must be wrong, you know, I must not have understood it correctly. And it's like, nope, the body knows. The body just knows, and it wouldn't direct you there if it wasn't sort of relevant to the person themselves.
I think there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score, isn't there? I haven't read it.
Oh, I haven't read that one. But
is that Gabor Mate? I'm not sure. Anyway, there's someone that's got a book that says the body keeps the score of all of those traumas, you know. And that's exactly what you're testing, because the body keeps the score, right?
Yeah, and it's perception as well. It's the emotion and the ideas that we link to that. So as a 6-year-old, the way the body translated it. Whereas if you'd been 14 and linking it, it might have come across quite differently.
Wow, that's amazing. There's some stories of people who have come to you with a knee problem and ended up at resolving all their family conflict.
Well, getting there, at least having an understanding of where they're stemming from.
Yeah, it's not going to happen overnight, but like I said, the first thing is awareness of that missing piece in the Jenga board, you know, in the Jenga block. And so that brings me to another question: is what led you into this path? And this YouTube channel is called Fork in the Road, where you'd make a decision to keep doing what you're doing, or you're going to go to the higher place and start doing some work. What's your story that led you into kinesiology, into a perfect balance, and into helping people move forward?
I guess I've always been inclined to want to help people, and growing up it was very much I grew up in a small country town. I went to school not knowing a word of English, so communication, as I said, was very, very important to me. I just felt like I was always lost and misunderstood. So I think sort of when I grew up and started to look at what I can do, I wanted to get into a field that would create safety, that would create understanding, where people felt like they were seen and heard and feeling supported in ways that maybe they hadn't been before, which led me down the path of social work, drug and alcohol, supported accommodation, disability. So I had all these sort of skills and abilities leading me to there, but nothing felt quite right. It always felt like we were band-aiding. It always felt like it wasn't really solving problems for me. I didn't really feel like I was actually making an impact in people's lives. So then kinesiology kind of landed on my lap, and I had no idea what it was. But when I actually started to break it down and saw all the things that it could do and all the tools that I could draw in, it lit me up. Something about it. I had never had a session. I'd never done any of that. But something about it just resonated. And when I did start to do my course, it became quite selfish in the sense that it meant that I could work from home. I could have my family, I can choose my hours while still serving and doing all those things.
Yes.
Until life kind of got in the way.
Right.
And then things kind of imploded, and I found myself morbidly depressed. I found that my marriage was falling apart. We lost our homes to the Black Saturday fires, and there was this snowball of stuff that kept happening. And I found, as I said, that my resources were being pulled in very, very different directions. And I was completely exhausted. I was wiped out. I was finding that 18 out of the 24 hours of the day I was in bed, holed up under the covers, not being able to cope. Simple things were triggering me. A laundry, a cup that hadn't been put away, and I wasn't able to focus at all. And this one particular time, I was driving my very young kids to school, possibly kinder, and I ran a red light without realising it, and I had to pull over and stop and go, what am I doing? That I couldn't even register that I had, that the light, it was just not there. And I didn't do it once, I did it a couple of times. Wow. And in that moment, I just did a complete meltdown and went, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep going forward like this. I'm going to kill someone. My kids are in danger. Anybody on the road is in danger. And I went, I just need help. I need help. And I'd been going to my doctor. I'd been talking to them. I'd been seeing counsellors. And I then went back to my kinesiologist, and there was a new kinesiologist at the time. And I sat down with her, and I'd been to her a couple of times, and she saw me in a way that nobody else had seen me. She connected with me in a way that nobody else had connected with me. And in that moment, she could see how stressed and how overwhelmed I was. She actually got off her chair, came down, knelt by me, grabbed my hands and looked up. So she was looking at me where I was at. So I was looking down. She made sure that she could see me from that eye level.
Wow.
And in that moment, she said, let go. And I just went, I can't. And I could feel all my triggers coming up.
Wow.
And I'm going to start crying. In that moment, she asked me to let go. And in that moment, she looked at me and she held my hand and she said, I'll catch you. You don't need to fall. I will catch you.
Well, that's a powerful thing to say.
That changed everything for me, because not only did she see and hear me, she was meeting me exactly where I was at. And she knew exactly what needed to be said in that moment. And in that moment, and when I look back on it, I don't think I fully understood what that meant, but she was supporting the supporter, because I felt like I had to hold my family up. I felt like I had to hold my parents up who just lost their home. I felt like I had to hold, I was the one that had to hold it all together. And I couldn't do it anymore. My Jenga game, my tower moment.
The board was about to fall down,
Everything was about to fall down.
Yeah.
And so it took quite a journey from that point on. And the kinesiology obviously got underneath all of those triggers and underneath why I felt I had to do that. But in that moment, having someone who got it, it shifted everything for me as far as why I want to serve people and why I want to help people, is because I can see how hard it can be for people to hold it together for everybody else and not know who they can turn to and who their safe person is. And if I can create a safe space for people to have those tower moments and know that they're going to be caught, know that they're going to be understood, know that it's okay to be vulnerable, then I've done what I've come here to do. And a perfect balance is about finding the balance between what you do for others and what you do for yourself. It's what you do in your business versus what you do at home. And it's not about getting it perfectly right, but knowing what's right for you.
Yeah.
And that to me is everything. Yeah.
And so your driving force is the fact that you were at that place where the Jenga tower was going to fall over, and that you had someone who supported you long enough to get you back to filling those gaps and moving forward and surviving and piecing it all back together.
Yeah. And she never gave up on me. Like, I went to her every month for the last 15 years.
Wow.
So, yeah, and well, I mean, up until recently, where she's then gone, you've got the skills, you've got the tools, come to me when you need it, but I now don't need that safety net where I've got the tools and the ability to do for myself.
Wow. And then
But
you're passing it on.
And I'm passing it on.
You're passing that on to other people. Wow, that's an amazing story. So it was all falling apart. You had someone to help you, and that's the driving force for you today. And that's the reason why you've created A Perfect Balance, using kinesiology and a range of other methods, no doubt, mixed in with that. And
totally. Yeah.
You've also got the Facebook group. Do you want to tell us all about how you're helping people who are supporting others in the Facebook group?
Yeah. So along with Mary Lou Coombs, we've got Thriving Biz Collective.
Thriving Biz Collective, yep.
Thriving Biz Collective, and our aim is to support other business entrepreneurs who are doing amazing, wonderful things in this world. So regardless of what it is, we allow a platform for which they can actually build their businesses, build their skills, network, communicate, tap into other resources and other business owners who have done it, been there before. So whether you're just starting off with an idea, or whether you're right at the end, not well established, we create a safe space for you guys to network, to put your business forward, and to create amazing things in the world.
Wow. And do you have any, I love stories. Do you have any like example stories of people who have come into that environment and you've seen them change over the years or months, or have you got any?
Oh my God, so many. So there's about 4 or 5 that jump to mind at the moment, where their hesitation and their inability to even do lives or to even promote what they do. And now they're just kicking goals. Like, I mean, in ways that they never even imagined. I'm watching people, you know, even posting themselves singing and playing piano, to those that would never have even done an event, because we actually hold events every month as well. So to encourage people to step into that role and promote what they do. And those platforms have been incredible. I'm watching people network in ways that they wouldn't have before. So tapping into the wider community and supporting each other. So it's an incredible space, because there's no competition within the group. If anything, they're going, how can I help you? What can I do? I've got this, I can tap you into this, or I've got this skill. How can I benefit you? And it's just been incredible. And especially with so many lockdowns happening, it's become family.
Yeah,
it's actually become family. It's wonderful. It's a beautiful space.
It's very important to get that support, isn't it? And especially in lockdown, where we can't actually physically network anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we found a way. So there's a way of networking and supporting each other, and there's so many people doing incredible things at the moment, and I couldn't be prouder of them.
Oh wow, that's exciting. So so you've got the Facebook group, and you've got A Perfect Balance, and so how do people find out about you as far as your side of the business?
Yeah, so I've got my webpage, so perfectbalance.com.au.
Yep.
I've also got a Facebook page, A Perfect Balance at Sonia North, which is where I'm located. And that doesn't mean that if you're not in the vicinity, I do phone call sessions as well. So if they want to,
so you do Zoom and Skype or whichever.
Phone calls at the moment. I haven't tapped into the Zoom as yet, but that's on its way. And and through a Thriving Biz Collective. So if anybody is interested in that, we're more than welcome.
I'll make sure I add all of the links in so that everyone can connect with you. But it sounds like an amazing journey you've been on. And it's been quite often is the case with anyone in the helping space that they've gone through their own journey, gone through their own pain, found their own solution, and then they really are passionate about helping people find their own solution as well, which is what you seem to be helping people, exactly what you're helping people with.
Yeah.
And so what would be your message to anyone out there who, because I love this series because it's all about hope. It's all about giving people hope that there's lots of options out there. So anyone who's lost hope, anyone who's, struggling out there, what's your, what would be a thing that you could throw at them to help them move forward and just to reach out? Would that be the advice, or what would you?
Yeah, definitely reach out, regardless of what stage you're at. As I said, like, having been a mum, having gone through sort of the depression, I get it. Trying to start my own business, I get it. I see it. Yep. And I mean, even if you're just wanting to start your own business yourself and you've got these incredible ideas, you'll need it, you'll want it. There's so much about you yourself that we need you to sort of step it up. And there are people here, including myself, Mary Lou, the group, that you'll find that help, you'll find that support. There is so much there for you. Don't give up. There is definitely help out there for you.
That's the message I really want people to get. There's lots of hope, lots of people. And the reason for the growth gurus is because there's people who have become gurus in their space, gurus for growth, but people like yourself who are just around the corner, or in this day and age, you can be on the other side of the world and you can reach out with Zoom links and phone calls and that sort of thing. And that there's hope, and that people who, and that's what I love, connecting with people like yourself who are in the local areas who can help you.
Yeah. And they need it. And but just remember that what you have and who you are is very important in this world. You'd be surprised at what it is that you can offer and where you're at. You're not alone. And I think sort of at the moment that's a really important message, because we have been so disconnected and isolated. You are not alone. Definitely not alone. Someone sees you, someone hears you.
That's right. At the time of this recording, we in Melbourne, where we're both located, or in the state of Victoria, Australia, we are in lockdown 6.0 over the last 18 months. It's our 6th time in, and probably a couple of more weeks before we're back out again, depending on how things go. So there's a lot of people that have all that uncertainty who are out there. There's a lot of people who, what's going on with my job? It's the kids I don't have kids, but I could imagine if you had kids, young kids, trying to manage a household, you'd need to be like a military, kind of discipline to try and get that sorted. So there's a lot of uncertainty. So there's help out there. And so don't wait until you're almost broken. Exactly. If you're finding it come up, reach out to someone like Sonia, and you can sort yourself out. And that's the message I want for everybody.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining me today, Sonia Charkisky.
My absolute pleasure.
From A Perfect Balance. Go and check out Sonia's website. Go and check out the Thriving Biz Collective. And you've got options, and that's the message. So thank you so much for joining me today, Sonia.
My absolute pleasure. It was wonderful being here.
Awesome. Thank you. And this is Matt Tate from Fork in the Road YouTube channel for the Growth Gurus series, where you can find someone in your area to help you grow. I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.